You won't believe what went down when this HOA Karen completely lost it just watching me collect water from my own well. There she was, storming onto my property, her business suit practically flapping with rage as she marched in, pointing, yelling, demanding answers. Her voice was sharp, her face red with fury. She was utterly convinced that my perfectly legal, fully permitted water well was somehow unauthorized. "This needs to be shut down immediately," she screeched. "Or else you're looking at thousands in fines." But what happened next? Oh! She got a lesson she won't be forgetting anytime soon. And trust me, if you're a homeowner, you need to see how this all played out. Because the story, it just might end up saving your property rights one day. You see, when I bought this little slice of paradise 5 years ago, I had a dream, a big dream. I wanted to make it completely self-sufficient. After grinding away for over a decade in the tech world, 60-hour work weeks, constant stress, I was ready to build something real, something sustainable, something that would take care of my family no matter what. But then, disaster struck. A brutal, relentless drought hit our region. 3 years passed with barely a drop of rain. My neighbors were struggling. Water bills, they doubled, then tripled. I'll never forget Mrs. Johnson next door, living on a fixed retirement income, being forced to choose between buying her medication or keeping her small garden alive. It was heartbreaking. Young families on my street started cutting back on essentials just to pay their utility bills. That's when I knew I had to do something. So I started digging, researching everything I could about alternative water sources. And guess what I found? Turns out my grandfather was way ahead of his time when he bought this land. We're sitting right on top of a pristine natural aquifer. And the best part? The original water rights tied to this land, they were never revoked. So I made a decision. I pulled $7,500 from our family's emergency fund and invested in a professional well installation. I did everything by the book: county permits, environmental impact assessments, depth certifications, you name it. I even had the water tested to make sure it was safe for my kids. And the day that clean, crystal clear water started flowing from that well, one of the proudest moments of my life. Little did I know, that moment marked the beginning of a nightmare. First, I noticed unfamiliar cars driving by. They slowed down, lingering near my property, but I brushed it off. Maybe just curious folks admiring the improvements I'd made. No big deal, right? Then Bob from down the street stopped me one evening, his expression tense. "Watch yourself," he warned. "The HOA has been doing special inspections lately, targeting people making changes without their blessing." I should have known then. But the real trouble started the next morning. An anonymous letter landed in my mailbox. No signature, just official HOA letterhead. The message? All water collection systems require pre-approval. Immediate compliance required. Funny thing is, my well isn't a collection system at all. It's legally accessing groundwater rights that predate the HOA by decades. But someone clearly had a problem with it. Later that evening, my security cameras caught something strange. Someone standing at the edge of my property, snapping pictures of my well. They didn't step onto my land, but they documented everything from a distance. Something felt off. A week later, an emergency HOA meeting notice went out to everyone in the neighborhood. The main agenda? Water usage regulations and enforcement. The timing? Way too coincidental. I spent that night gathering every permit, every water rights document, and every approval letter I had. My gut told me I was going to need them. But even I wasn't prepared for what happened the next morning. 7 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman standing there, clipboard in hand, a scowl already twisting her face. No greeting, no identification, just immediate hostility. "Mr. Johnson, I'm here regarding multiple violations on your property." I stayed polite. "Good morning. Mind identify yourself first." She huffed, crossing her arms. "I'm with the Homeowners Association. That's all you need to know." "Oh, really?" I asked for her official HOA position. She ignored me. Instead, She just barged past me, marching straight for my backyard. And that's when she saw it. My well, her eyes locked onto it like a heat-seeking missile. "This unauthorized structure must be removed immediately," she snapped, already scribbling furiously on her clipboard. "Ma'am, this is a properly permitted well. I have all the documentation," I said, staying calm. She cut me off. "Groundwater is community property. The HOA bylaws clearly state that all water usage must be approved and metered." That's when I pulled out my file folder. "Actually," I said, flipping to the relevant section, "my property has grandfathered water rights from 1958. The county has fully approved this installation." Her face turned red. "Those rights were surrendered when you joined the HOA, she barked. "That's incorrect," I countered. "Water rights run with the land, not the homeowner. They can't be surrendered unless explicitly documented," which they weren't. That's when she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling for backup. This situation requires immediate intervention." I overheard her whispering into the phone, "He's being completely uncooperative. Yes, we may need to place a lien. No, don't worry about the documentation yet." That was the moment I decided I needed to record this. I pulled out my phone. For everyone's protection, I'm documenting this interaction. Her expression changed. Rage mixed with something else. Fear. "Turn that OFF," she shrieked, lunging toward me, trying to block the camera. "Recording HOA business is prohibited. Actually, this is my private property, and I have every right to record." I shot back. Her voice dropped to a threatening whisper. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I can make your life absolutely miserable." I stood firm. "I'm dealing with someone who hasn't identified themselves, entered my property without permission, and is now threatening me. Step back." And that's when I saw it, her designer watch, the luxury car parked out front. This wasn't just a random HOA volunteer. And then she let something slip. "Your well is reducing property values. The aesthetic damage alone violates at least 3 bylaws." There it was, the real reason behind all of this. But I wasn't backing down. And what happened next? Well, let's just say it didn't end the way she expected.